Hello, I'm Lawrence and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to words. And as we've seen in the past, there are many words that exist in both British and American English that have completely different meanings depending on which side of the pond you're on. This is part 3 in that very series. Previously we've looked at the difference between cookie and biscuit and trolley and tram, etc, etc. Today I have 8 more words with different meanings in Britain and America. So sit back, strap in and prepare yourself for a wild ride, potentially on one of these. Now I've just realised that transition probably sounded really problematic to Americans for whom a coach is not what it is in Britain. In the United States, a coach could mean one of two things. Firstly, a coach is an extracurricular sports teacher, right? It's what the British would call a PE teacher. That's physical education for those that don't know. But for those of you that remember what flying is like, the word coach is also used in the United States to describe the lowest class on a passenger aircraft. And in the United Kingdom, that's known as economy. Before the pandemic hit, the wife and I were actually booked on a flight to the UK in July, and it wasn't economy, I can tell you that. It was the one above it, but we got lucky. It wasn't. We're not rich. I don't want people to think that. Precinct. So precincts in either country have been hampered by this pandemic, and that's because firstly in the United Kingdom a precinct it's usually a sort of a public place that lots of people can go to walk around. Specifically I'm thinking of a shopping precinct, right? It's what America would call a shopping mall. But that does not mean that the word precinct is absent from American English. Far from it. The word precinct shows up in America during election cycles, and I've heard a rumour that we're in the middle of one right now, although you wouldn't know it because it's like the news has been brushed under the carpet. But in an electoral sense, a precinct is a subdivision of a county or a town or a city. Furthermore, it can be used to describe a section of a city that is patrolled by police, so the walkway outside of my apartment. Anyway, on the subject of authority figures and, politicians, that brings us on to this. Alright, governor, sorry I'm late. I'm not late. I didn't promise any particular time. But a governor, I said it there in a very strange accent. It's Cockney. They speak it in London. And that, I think, to British people, the word governor is most associated with that particular pronunciation and usage. It really just means boss, right? You refer to someone as your boss. It could be your work boss as a governor, right? And sometimes that is said as gavna, right? No R on the end. Or it might even be shortened to gav. All right, gav. If your boss also happens to be called Gavin, then you're in for a linguistic treat. But in the United States, the word is more defined, isn't it? Each of the 50 states has a governor and he or she governs. That's allegedly. We don't really have what are called governors in that sense in Britain. We have, local MPs or council men and women. That could be the equivalent, I think. It's hard to say. 2 different political systems. What are you going to do? Stay with me here. I'm going to see if I can keep it together. The word bomb does mean arse, and there's no getting around that. In Britain it does mean arse, and there are certain words that they break me and make it hard for me to not laugh. And arse is one of those, and I can't, how am I going to get through this? It's like the word poo. As soon as I hear it, I just start laughing. Sorry, but it's very immature, not entirely professional. So yes, in the United Kingdom, bum is another word for backside. Hence why, back in the 90s, people wore bum bags instead of fanny packs. And in America, of course, fanny is an antiquated term for bum and for arse, and this is impossible. And so that's why they say fanny pack. Anyway, so yes, that's what it means in the United Kingdom. But in America, bum can be a derogatory term for a homeless person. All right, I'm not in the habit of using it in that sense, but I am in the habit sometimes of using it in this sense. If I'm kind of sad or I'm melancholy because I've not been outside in 44 days, I might say that I'm bummed out. I wouldn't have said that before I moved to America. I've certainly picked that up here. Okay, can we move on to the next one, please? This begins one of several entries on this list that not only provides us a word that has a different meaning on either side of the pond, but also a different pronunciation. Now, both countries, of course, employ the word row to row a boat, and it's pronounced the same way in either country. But in Britain, we also use the spelling ROW to mean an argument. We had a row. Just like I'm going to have a row with my producers after making me do the previous entry straight-faced. I mean, they failed, let's be honest, but I'm still going to have a row with a quarrel. But row with that pronunciation, and indeed that definition is not to be found here in the United States, or at least not commonly. The pronunciation, just like the verb to row, is used in other senses here in the United States. Think of prisons, because what else is there to think about? And, you know, when you've got a sort of a collection of cells, that's often referred to here in the United States as a row. Think of death row, he says, strapped to his chair. I hope this doesn't have a lever, does it? All right, lever then. And just as I discussed in a video a couple of months back, there's a portion of the eastern United States that refers to townhouses, or what we refer to in Britain as terrace houses, as row houses. Row houses, they're compact together, aren't they, on either side, which is a terrible example of social distancing. Not that architecture falls under the same remit as humans. What is this? You stuck bum in there and now you make it... My mum's watching this. Boob tube. How on earth does this not have the same meaning on either side of the pond? It doesn't, and I don't know. I can't tell if one influenced the other, but I'm just going to tell you straight up. A boob tube in Britain is that kind of women's top, you know, that it's strapless, it's short. It basically just covers the boobs. I mean, I wear a towel for that kind of thing. Not in public. Well, I'm not right now. We're in quarantine. But unbelievably, this word, this phrase doesn't carry the same meaning in the United States, where that particular garment is known as a tube top. A boob tube, for reasons that are presumably lost in the pond, is a slang term for television, and usually rubbish television. Let me clarify, I'm not referring to rubbish television set. I'm talking about crap TV programs. Keeping Up with the Kardashians, or what's some other ones? I don't watch TV. Tiger King. What's Tiger King? Well, it's a sequel to The Lion King. Does James Earl Jones still do the voice of the father? It's like Star Wars, essentially. Tiger King is like Star Wars. Well now, this one is somewhat related, of course, to the previous entry, but there are some distinctions here, specifically the British portion of its definition. It's got nothing to do with the upper body of men or women. What Americans would probably refer to as a subway, as you do in New York City, we refer to it in London, you know, very specifically as the London Underground, or just the Tube. And notice the way I said that. It's how I pronounce YouTube, which I can't believe YouTube hasn't come up in this. That's where YouTube came from. Tube. Can you remember when it used to have in its logo a big television? I thought that YouTube originated the notion of tube as a television. Apparently it's been around in America since probably the 50s. And as I alluded to a moment ago, on the whole, Americans are more likely to pronounce it tube. YouTube on a Tuesday. It's Wednesday today. That's no good. It's hump day. I should have included that one. That's another dirty one. Derby, 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 Derby. Or Derby if you're in the United States. And before you come at me for my weird pronunciation of this very word, consider how all of us pronounce sergeant. English is just mad, I tell you, with a voice that's exclusive for dogs. Either way, I have a gripe with the universe today. So this video was planned way back in Christmas, when I looked ahead at the calendar of events that was coming up in the year. One of those events was set to take place a couple of weeks from now, known as the Kentucky Derby. I wanted to capitalise on the fact that thousands of people would be searching for Kentucky Derby in Google and YouTube by having it in my thumbnail and my tags. And then it presumably got cancelled like all of the other sporting events. What? Till when? September? I could just do this video then. Shall I not put this video out tonight? What do you mean it's already gone out? Either way, that sense of derby or derby, as in a horse race or a race of some kind, is used on either side of the pond, but there are some other definitions that aren't. In Britain, it's another sporting terminology. It's when two teams from the same city play each other, and it's kind of a rivalry game, right? So you've got the Manchester Derby between Manchester United and Manchester City. You've got the Merseyside Derby between Liverpool and Everton and so on. It's like if, you know, the Chicago Bulls played the Chicago Bears. Two different sports. Meanwhile, in the United States, a derby is a type of hat. In fact, it's what we would know in Britain as a bowler hat. And these kind of hats, of course, were very popular in both countries in the early 20th century and were popularised by comedians. So Laurel and Hardy or Charlie Chaplin, for example. And if I were a betting man, I would wager that they're going to make a comeback because just about every fashion fad from the turn of the 20th century has started to do so. I mean, look at the twirly mustaches that a lot of people wear around Chicago. And that's just the kids, you know, wait till I start doing it. If they don't make a widespread comeback, I will literally, well, eat my hat. Although my hat is made of wool. Doesn't go down well. That's it for this episode. Thank you for joining me for yet another video in this very series. Let me know in the comments below some of your favourite words that have different meanings on either side of the pond. And if you like this kind of discussion or anything to do with Britain versus America, or just want to know more about my daily routines and life and things like that, you can follow me on Twitter at LostInThePondUS. Of course, one of the best ways to stay on top of my channel is to subscribe. That way my videos don't get lost in the pond. And a huge shout out to all my patrons who make all of these videos possible. Without them, I wouldn't have had two camera angles because, well, I wouldn't have had two cameras. So big thank you to all of my patrons, and if you would like to join that particular community, you can do so at patreon.com/lostinthepond. Until next time, stay home, stay safe, and stay watching me on the boob tube. Unless you're British, that could get weird. Thank you for watching this episode of Lost in the Pond. Don't forget to hit my stupid little face to subscribe, and please share this video with the world. Hit me up on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, and if you would like to support this channel, please do so at patreon.com/lostinthepond.